No. All right. Go over it over. Good morning and welcome to the presentation on test scores. Thank you for attending. Today we're going to cover how to read the reports that you'll be getting very soon by the end of the year in an email on the CTP and the milestones in the RAP. A little bit about Educational Records Bureau. That's the maker of our tests, and that's a company used by most independent schools for their standardized testing. And we use three of their assessments: the milestones, which is a formative assessment in third and fourth grades. And what that means is it's not an achievement test. It measures a student's academic progress at 3 points during the school year. So we administer that in fall and in winter and in spring. The CTP is an achievement test, and it measures both reasoning and achievement. And we give that test or that assessment in 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. And then the RAP we give in grades 3 through 8, and that's the writing assessment program. And that's an excellent way to measure students' writing skills. So we find these resources really invaluable to us as a school to help us look at our curriculum, look at trends across grades, and help us figure out how we can make changes to keep us competitive. With the ERB, the schools that use those assessments are member schools. And so everyone who is a member of ERB is from an independent school, or there are very few suburban schools that are really high achieving in the Northeast that belong. So when you look at the independent school population, it typically is a more selective population to start with than just a public school group. So the bar is higher for the scores. So we compare ourselves to the independent school group because we are an independent school and we want to try to meet that high bar. The great thing is, even as small as we are, and even though we take kids with a range of abilities, we typically achieve at or above the independent norm group in most areas. Not always. Sometimes we say, we're not where we need to be with this particular subject area. And then we can address those needs. Here is just an explanation of how we use the data. As I said, we use the class and grade results to help us look at our strengths and weaknesses in our curriculum and teaching methodology. And then, of course, what you are most interested in is being able to track your own students' progress. And the new reports offered by ERB this year will make it much easier for you to track your child's progress through the grades. I'll go through more information about scale scores, et cetera, when I'm showing you actual reports, but just a little bit of background information. Scale scores are what we use to measure growth over time. And on the RAP, the writing program, typically scale scores are tied to grade levels. So if your child is in 3rd grade, her score should be, scale score should be in the 300 to 400s. 300s would be what's expected. 400s would be that she or he is achieving above grade level in writing. On the CTP and milestones, it's not exactly that same correlation. You will see scale scores grow over time as the child matures and works his or her way up the grades. Percentile ranks do not appear on the CTP and milestones reports this year. You will see percentile ranks on the RAP. And that is comparing the students of the group's performance to that of students at the same grade level at the suburban norm group, the independent norm group, and sometimes the national norm group. So the national norm group would be kids in public schools that are given the ERB test for them to get a sampling. So that is generally a lower bar. So your child's score is going to be higher their national, as compared to the national norm group. The suburban norm group appears on some of our reports, and we don't really use that, but ERB just puts it on there sometimes, and that's comparing your kids to those few select suburban public schools. And then the independent norm group is the group of students in independent schools, and as I said, that's a higher bar. So your student might have, when you look at the percentiles, a really high percentile when compared to the national norm group, but lower when compared to the independent norm group because it's a more selective population. Let's take a look at the RAP report. This is the writing assessment report that you will get. And across the top, you can see that this is an 8th grader, and there are 6 different rubrics for the RAP, or 6 different categories on the rubric. The RAP, each essay is read by 2 readers, and therefore it's a very lengthy process of getting a whole school's scores back, and we're waiting right now. But the readers don't know whether they're reading a 3rd or 4th grade essay. Those are banded together, and they have the same prompt, and so they don't know if they're reading a 3rd grade essay or a 4th grade essay. So they score it, and then it is analyzed according to the norm group and the age group. That's why typically, since they're using that higher grade level set of skills, that kids may not score as well in the 3rd grade because they're being compared to the 4th grade. But then when they do the norm groups and the scale scores, that the grade level is calculated in. So for this student who's an 8th grader, the rubric has a scale of 6. You can see that this child scored a 5 in overall development, 5 in organization, 4 in support, 4 in sentence structure, 5 in word choice, 5 in mechanics. It gave them a total raw score of 28, and that converted to a scale score of 961. This is an 8th grader, so you would expect his or her scores to be in the 800s. So this is a child who did really well. And then you can see right here the percentile rank in Stanine. They have suburban norms and independent norms. Compared to the suburban norm group, this child did better than 76% of kids taking the test in that group. In the independent norm group, the child did better than 85% of the kids taking the test in independent schools. That's very good. On the other side of the slash mark, where you see under suburban norm 76/6, that 6 is the Stanine. So scores on the RAP are divided into 9 groups. So if your child's score is low, it would be in the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd Stanine. It's like the bell curve. Most scores fall in the 4th, 5th, and 6th Stanines. And then you have fewer scores that fall in the 7th, 8th, and 9th Stanines. But that just gives you a quick way to look and see, oh, this score falls in the above average, or this score falls in the average. So that's just a quick glance on the RAP to help you see how your child did compared to the norm groups. Okay, on the back side of the score that you'll get, you actually see the rubric, and you see the scores range from 1 to 6, and then across the top, you can actually read like what a 6 paper, what they look for to score a 6 in overall development and the other elements of the rubric. And so you can see that they highlight in gray where your child's essay fell. So that gives you an understanding of what your child's strengths were, and then maybe some areas that they need a little extra focus to hone their writing skills. Okay, before I move on to actual CTP and milestone score reports, I love this. Beth found this. What learning appears to be and what learning actually is. And you'll see this even on the score reports, that we would like to see this great linear progression, but actually kids have so much going on, and learning is not just test focused. They're learning social skills. They're learning thinking and problem solving, critical thinking skills. There is so much going on in a child's mind. And that's why one of the reasons I love ESK is that testing for us is not high stakes. It is one piece of data, and it's an important piece, but it's not who your child is. Mm-hmm. And tests don't measure creativity. They don't measure character. They don't measure social skills. They don't measure artistic ability, dance, athleticism, love of reading, quirkiness, all the things that go into making kids who they are and that we value. So keeping the test scores into perspective, it's only one piece of data. And please ask questions. When you get your child's scores, if you have any questions, you please make an appointment. Make an appointment with Beth, make an appointment with Mary Lovely, make an appointment with your child's teacher, because we want you to be able to make sense of the data. Before I move on to the actual score reports for CTP and milestones, a question that parents often have is, well, why does my child make straight A's, but then they have a low score on this achievement test? And the reason for that is class grades are made up of homework grades and teacher assessment, chapter quizzes, participation grades. It's measuring not comprehensively, but at shorter points of data, gathering shorter points of data through the year. Whereas the achievement test is given later in the school year, and it is comprehensive. So it covers information that they may not have had recently. They may have had it earlier in the school year and they've forgotten it. So also, taking a test, an achievement test, is a different skill set. They have to understand timing, that you can't waste too much time on one question. And so it requires a set of test-taking skills that they may be developing. So that's why kids oftentimes will make really good grades, because they've got a good work ethic. They get their homework done. They're studying for their quizzes. But yet when it comes to an achievement test that's comprehensive, they may not do quite as well. So please ask questions if you have any once you get your scores. Make an appointment. We're happy to sit down with you. I see you did well in school, but what real world skills do you have? Tests. I can take tests. We don't want to produce kids like this. We want to produce kids who are ready to tackle what the future holds for them, whatever that may be. Now let's switch to the actual score report so you can see what you're going to be getting for your child. And as you can see, this is a milestones report. You want me to enlarge it?
Yeah.
Okay. This is a 4th grade milestones report. And this is for the subject of math. And these bars across the top and the bottom here are the maximum and minimum scores. And then the graphs that you see here, the blue one is your child's milestone scores, and the red dotted line is the independent school average. And down here, you have a chart to help you understand the data points that you're looking at. So last year, we did not give a milestones assessment in the fall. That's why that column is blank. We gave one in winter, and this student's scale score was 422. So that's that first blue point right there. And the independent school average in winter was 431. So you can see that this child's score was very similar to where the independent school average was when they took that winter assessment. Then they took it again in the spring of last year, and that's that data point. The scale score was 509 for the student and 429 for the independent school average. So you can see that here's the independent school. That student made a big learning jump in math from winter to spring. Well, as you saw that graph earlier, learning does not continue upward and onward necessarily. And so when we gave the fall milestones, this student's score dropped a little bit. The scale score was 477. The independent school average was 466. So it was closer, but still slightly above where the independent school group scored. That was for the fall. Then for the winter, this student gained at about the same pace as the independent school average. So the scale score was 555. The independent school average was 523. And then for the spring assessment, the student jumped to 618. The independent school average was 565. So you can see that there was a general trend upward with a little blip there.
But we also have to remember this is not a summative.
Right.
So it's not a cumulative. This literally, there are skills that were tested in the first section that weren't tested in the second section, and some skills, because whatever ERB's academic pacing, like we may follow a different pace. So some of the things the kids got in math we haven't covered yet. So, best guess or whatever, but a lot of that's just some problem solving. And Lois, when you go over the bottom, will you make it bigger?
Yeah.
So they can. Yeah, especially this to me is the most important thing.
Yeah, they had never put this on a report before, and we are so happy. So down here, you can see how much time your student took on each section, and that's very informative. So the first time they took the test in winter, it's untimed because they're just getting used to it. There's no time limit. The student took 25 minutes. But then for the later assessments, you can see that 40 minutes was allowed, and this student in the spring of 21-22 spent 21 minutes on the test, even though she had 40 minutes. In the fall, she spent 33 out of 40 minutes. In the winter, she spent a little more time, 38 out of 40 minutes, and when she took it in the spring, she used her full time and took 40 minutes. Okay, now the reading comprehension for this same child, I won't go through that again. I think you can just see at a glance, again, how the learning curve appears. So this student, just at a glance, you can tell that from winter to spring of last year, her reading scores didn't make the progression that was expected. But then she may have been not feeling good on that day. But then when the assessment was given in the fall, look at that dramatic leap there, and way above the independent school average.
But
And then it leveled out a little bit, but the student still ended up with her reading comprehension scores being well above the independent average, and also a significant area of growth for that
I was going to
child.
say, if you look at the time, sometimes there's correlation. So that the time on the spring of last year when this child was in third grade, 20 minutes. And and then this year, so she or he took 26 minutes and 28, and then a little bit more seriously, I would guess, but I will also know, because I administered this test this year, that reading test, it wasn't necessarily difficult, but it was overwhelming because there were so many passages. Poetry's fine, but like I kept turning the page going, are we not done yet? And so I'd say it was also a test of their stamina within a short period of time. So unfortunately, some kids, it may be took 40 minutes and they took the whole time and they didn't get finished. So that's a real, we've got to, and those are skills we can teach, but I don't want to teach the test.
Right.
That's why we just kind of take this as what can we do to improve.
And we do help them learn some test taking skills. They get, if they have a time test, there's a clock on there and they can see how much time they've got. And also, the great thing about these tests, they're administered on Chromebooks, both the CTP and the milestones. RAP is still a handwritten test. But for the milestones and CTP, they're taking it on their Chromebooks. There are buttons that allow them to skip. If there's a difficult question, they can skip it or they can mark it. And each section has a review screen. So before they click finish, they can review and see which items they skipped and go back to them, but they can review everything and change if they want to. But that's another test-taking skill that to help them learn to move on and work within a certain period of time. And that, again, reading in a book and reading on a device are two different skill sets. So it is another test-taking skill to be able to read on a device and find the information that you're looking for as opposed to reading in a book. Okay, we have another student here. I just wanted to show you. This is a 6th grade student. So this child has both CTP and milestone scores. So you can see here that you have only the spring milestones from their 4th grade year. You don't get the fall, winter, spring. And then you have the spring CTP from last year and this year's spring CTP. And again, very useful graph to plot. The red dotted line is the independent school average. The blue solid line is the child's score. So you see that in the spring, this child had a 537 in math. And then for the spring CTP, a 544. And then for this year's spring, 599. So this student made progress. This student is not quite at the bar of the independent school norm, but that's okay. It's really important to look where the kid starts out. So if the kid starts out down here and they're making progress, that's important because that's who that kid is. Not everybody is going to be a 99th percentile kid, and we don't expect them to be. And then there's the reading comprehension for that same child. And again, you've got the 3 data points. And you can see what a huge leap this child made from where she started to where she ended. She started just slightly above the independent norm group, but that she ended way above. So from spring of 2020 to spring of 2022, this child's reading comprehension scores really improved, and that's great to see. I'm not going to go through every report, but I did want to show you on verbal reasoning. Notice we only have 2 data points, and that's because milestones only measures mathematics and reading comprehension. So there wasn't verbal reasoning on the milestones. So the verbal reasoning and all of the other subtests, the quantitative reasoning and so forth with the CTP, you won't see a milestone score for that. So you'll only have 2 data points. And this shows, this is verbal reasoning, that this child made a huge leap. They progressed at a stronger rate than the independent norm group. They started below and they ended up slightly above the independent school average. And again, you can see how many minutes that child spent on the test. Okay, and then I just have more reports, but they tell you the same information. So we don't necessarily need to go through those. Do you have any questions about the information that we've covered so far? Well, thank you for attending, and I encourage you, when you get your child scores, if you have any questions at all, please get in touch with Beth Sturkey or Mary Lovely or your child's teacher, or if it's before the end of the school year, get in touch with me, and we'll be glad to sit down and talk with you. So thank you for attending.
Thank you.